The abortion debate goes beyond Louisiana. This afternoon, a federal appeals court in New Orleans heard arguments involving the abortion pill mifepristone.
Sabrina Wilson was in court and has more.
Yeah, and all seats were taken in the courtroom and dozens packed in to witness the arguments firsthand. At issue is the drug mifepristone, a pill used for abortions. Pro-life groups claim the drug is unsafe, while the FDA disagrees. The case involves whether the FDA's initial approval of the pill back in 2000 and its subsequent actions to make the drug easier to obtain should be reversed. In April, a federal judge in Texas put a hold on the FDA's approval of the drug. Then the New Orleans-based Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal stayed that Texas judge's ruling so that it could hold a hearing. Leaders of Louisiana Right to Life, a pro-life group, were in court for today's hearing. Attorneys for the Biden administration hurried to waiting vehicles and didn't comment to the media after the 2-hour court hearing. However, the Alliance Defending Freedom, a pro-life group which argued against the abortion pill in court, did speak.
The FDA should face the consequences of its reckless approval of chemical abortion drugs. Our women and our girls deserve better.
My colleagues and I have seen the effects of the FDA's reckless approval of mifepristone far too many times. Since its initial approval of mifepristone, the FDA has repeatedly removed the bare minimum safeguards that it had previously put in place for chemical abortions.
Now, Biden administration attorneys argued in court that the FDA has determined that the drug is safe to use up to 10 weeks of pregnancy. The 3 judges hearing the case were appointed by former Republican presidents, 1 by George W. Bush and 2 by Donald Trump. But attorneys for the other side told the judges what the FDA did is illegal. The appeals court did not rule today, and whatever is ultimately decided is expected to be appealed, and the case is expected to ultimately land at the U.S. Supreme Court.